Everybody, welcome to another episode of Maps Are Dead. I'm Mike D. Really excited today to have my good friend Jeremy Pietrosini with me today. Jeremy and I, we go way back, but you're gonna hear that story. But Jeremy is a long time, 20 plus years with Gallup as a consultant and teacher and speaker and coach for them. He's currently a senior advisor for Gallup, and he is also a good friend of mine. And Jeremy, you've made some major life changes, and I thought you'd be a perfect person to jump on this podcast. So thanks for making time for me today.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Always, dude.
For those playing along at home, because we talk about this really is all about Maps Are Dead is the title of the podcast based on how do you navigate moments when no one else can tell you what to do. There is no map, and so decision making. And how do you lean into your strengths? You guys know Clifton Strengths is probably my favorite tool in the world. So if you're watching this, you know I always put the strengths behind me, and we'll talk about those strengths. For those of you wondering what Jeremy has, you may hear some of his strengths some of your strengths in his story. Maximizer, strategic, futuristic, belief connectedness. And he and I have talked enough that we know that his self-assurance and woo are pretty tight in there too. So he threw those up on the board as well. Did I miss it? I get those all right, Jeremy? That's the right list?
Right. Yeah, right on.
Jeremy, what would you say is the biggest moment you've had to navigate in recent history that no one else could tell you what to do?
So recent history, and Mike, you've lived this with me, but would be the launch of a new business with my son that just happened this past summer. So I guess depending, this is a podcast, so you could be listening 6 years later, but
no, it won't be that long.
Summer of 25. Yeah, summer of 25.
Nice. One of the things that stood out to me why it's like, I want you on this call. One, I know how much you know strengths, and we'll talk strengths for people who are kind of geeks like us when it comes to actually understanding themes. But a lot of times I'll meet people who are mid in their career, right? They're anywhere from 35 to 55, and they're asking themselves, am I on the right train? What if I'm not? What if this isn't going to take me where I want to go?
Yep.
And they're questioning, how do I make that decision? Is it the right time? Is it not the right time? And I've known you well enough to know that for years you've talked about wanting to create and write. But being a Gallup for a long time, I was always waiting for, what's the other parts of the creativity going to come out? Why now? What is it that, and how did you navigate this decision to go, you know what, I'm going to launch Recreate Work, and I'm going to do it, and this is the time to do it?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I knew this would happen at some point, and even with conversations with some Gallup leaders, I could talk about the fact that I do want to write. I love speaking. Gallup's given me a huge platform to speak. Pre-Gallup, that was, speaking and creating content and leading leaders was part of what I did in the nonprofit space as well. So, and Mike, I know you have a little bit of activator command high. Yes. So as my friend, my coach, just a little bit. It's the what are you waiting for? A couple things. I think for me, there's two things. There's a good and a bad. There's like I knew someday it would happen. That's probably a little bit of my futuristic, strategic. I could see it. I know there's a roadmap to get there, and I like even today's topic or your whole mantra of maps are dead. Was I following this map or trying to follow this map?
Yeah.
Where what I needed, as you have embedded inside of my brain and my heart too, is what I needed is a compass. And is that where my self-assurance, even my connectedness, trusting is now the time versus what's the timeline. So the really cool thing, man, of when I think about stage of life, both my kids are no longer at home. I'm traveling most weeks. My wife and I have talked a lot, and my wife Jill very well. We just talked a lot about, what does this next phase of life look like? And instead of waiting, I'm 51, instead of waiting another 10 years and then saying, okay, let's now, kind of do something, is what's next? And by the way, a lot of people in their next chapter of life and kind of post-retirement, not really do some coaching, consulting, speaking. But what I realize is I'm like, I don't want it to just be a comma in my story. I want what I'm doing and what have been doing the last 20 years at Gallup, but to be able to expand that story. I want to do that while I've still got energy. I know I've got plenty of gray in my beard, but while I've still got energy, passion, and there's a ton of risk involved, but it was also just feeling maybe that sense of self-assurance that, hey, now is the time.
Because what's interesting to me, and and I kind of wonder if you felt any of this. One of the things about Maximizer that I've noticed over the years is that you have Maximizer, which is pretty strong for you.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know what Maximizer is, when it comes to Maximizer, it's this idea of being able to extract unseen potential in a thing, right? Between what is good and great. They really know how to kind of dive in and make things truly exceptional. They want to do things that are recognizably great. What's interesting for me is that I've noticed that there's times that Maximizer's drive for excellence or perfection or maximized impact or results can also result in a delay because they're waiting for the maximized time to do it, the perfect moment, the perfect thing, the perfect. And so suddenly the thing that's like going to drive you to want to be great and create is also the thing that gets in your way, where it holds you back. You're like, because I mean, Joseph and I, your son, have talked endlessly. I'm like, is Jeremy going to pull the trigger? He's waiting for perfect. How do we get him to move? And which is funny because you have strategic belief. So people might think, oh gosh, you're just going to dive in, but you kept waiting. Does any of that resonate? Do you ever find that you will hold off waiting for the perfect opportunity or the perfect moment, and you have to navigate that?
Yeah. So so two things, and I'll give a Clifton Strengths answer to this. As you said, many of the listeners are maybe familiar with Clifton Strengths. So I really love that in even the more recent reports. So Strengths has been around 30 years, but I love that in the last 5 or 6 years, this whole concept of blind spots. So what's good about Maximizer? Where does it maybe get in my way? What's good about strategic? The blind spot, as you know, of Maximizer is perfection, and good is never good enough. So there's never I'll be working on a document and I'm like, no, but just the font's not right. And you're like, just send the freaking thing, like just get it out the door. So definitely in life, and back to decision making, I think that even for people who don't have strengths or who don't have Maximizer, maybe two things. We're waiting for the perfect one to happen. So it could be I'm car shopping and I'm like, oh, the Lexus GX, but there's a new one coming out. This actually happened in real life with my wife a couple years ago. She was driving the GX and I'm like, no, wait, there's a new one coming out. It's just not out yet. We got to,
let's just
stay
wait.
in this one
Let's
a little
just
bit
wait.
longer. Yeah. By the way, there were then recalls on it. So it took 36
Forever.
months from that point we were having that conversation. But it's a little bit of like, are you delaying the decision for perfection? And then I think there's times too where it's the opposite. And I know you talk a lot about this with fear, it's the fear of making a mistake. You're like, okay, even back to 20 years ago when I was making a big career change from working in the nonprofit faith-based space to going to work for Gallup, I'm like, I don't want to give up my mission. Though being now Joseph and I, co-founding Recreate Work, is it just a new vehicle to help us accomplish the same mission of, inspiring leaders to transform culture? So I'm like, I've done that in, nonprofit mission-based work. I've done it through my 20 years at Gallup. I'm now doing it with my new business. And so that whole idea, I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to miss that. I don't want to, I remember chatting with you again when I was making the decision to come to Gallup 20 years ago. And I'm like, but I've got these two other opportunities. And I think my fear there wasn't as much about perfection as it was about, I don't want to choose poorly. You hear with college kids all the time, am I choosing the wrong school? They're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think there's some.
What overrides that? So if you look at moments when you're like, you know what, I feel that, I'm wondering about doing it wrong, not wanting the imperfection, is there ever a moment that you're like, that actually becomes significantly less in these scenarios? When this is on the line, I find that I have incredible clarity and the action kicks in. What overwhelms the perfection part? What part of your strengths do you think fires? What situations will do that for you?
Yeah, I'm going to say mission, which again, back to that
Connectedness
lines would be belief, right?
Yeah, I believe in connectedness there.
But if mission matters, I'm like, hey, if we're on a mission to do something, like just do it. Probably almost sounds in that sense a little bit more like activator, entrepreneurial. Let's just go. And then the other thing, I think, connectedness and self-assurance. So in the early years at Gallup, Dr. Clifton, who developed the Clifton Strengths Assessment, and he had passed away just before I joined Gallup, so I never had the privilege to cross paths with him. But if you read some of his writings, even some of the other books he did, co-wrote, there's a lot he talks about faith and just kind of, this bigger mission that we are on to impact the planet for good. And one of the things that in the early days when they were developing connectedness, I heard one of our researchers say that they actually used to call it spirituality. So for me, that makes a lot of sense. I'm like, if I believe I'm following a God and there's something bigger than me, and 9 out of 10 people on the planet would, say they believe in something bigger than themselves. Even in AA programs and other things, you're like, what is it that you're looking
Power
to?
greater than myself,
I
give
think
restore
for
me to
me,
sanity.
Mike, in those moments, I need to actually trust and have faith. It'd be like if I'm in Minneapolis or you've got me in Patagonia on a trip and you're like, dude, trust me on this. I'm like, but I need to see, I need the map, I need the perfection. Is this the best route? Is this the best weather? At some point you go, dude, trust me. Mission and faith. And so it's like, I think those two things for me are when all the answers aren't there, when you've only got 7 out of 10, you've got the parachute on your back. Is it time to just step out? You don't know it's going to open, but you're hoping it does.
But I think that's it's a good handhold for people who are trying to figure out if they're navigating for themselves. If people are like watching this and they're going, I have so many options and I don't know what to do. But if you have belief or connectedness in your top 5, instead of then vetting options, my suggestion first would be, if you have belief or connectedness, start with the cause. If you're not diving in, it's because the meaning and the cause isn't clear enough yet to matter. And so options won't do anything other than confuse you. If you have belief or connectedness when you're decision making, you have to start with cause. Does that sound right?
Yeah, because I think that cause piece, and you've said this before too. Mission isn't just what am I living for, or what am I willing to die for, and this is my cause. But it's like, what am I willing to live for? And if we're willing to live for it, there's oftentimes other people that depend on it too. So me waiting, maximizing, overthinking, pausing, it's actually robbing it from me accomplishing like the building's on fire, run into the building, or people are hungry, take them food. So whatever the cause is, I think you're absolutely right. The cause can bring clarity.
Yeah. You have Futuristic in your top 5, which is the gift of really seeing potential. It's vision. You see what's possible. I always say Futuristic can see the upside of everything from a business plan to how a sandwich can be made better with pickles. Like, it's this whole variety of anything can be improved. And the mix of seeing something, also recognizing that reality doesn't match it sometimes. How do you navigate the gap between the vision in your head and the reality on the ground when you get there?
Yeah, so I like that you're weaving in, I don't know, kind of an optimism piece with Futuristic, because I
love it.
My son Joseph, he's got positivity 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So
Positivity
all 5. Has that natural energy. But for me, the seeing the future. And by the way, sometimes you might see the future and you're like, it doesn't look great. Like, here is what's happening. Here's the foundation of your house is crumbling, and here's what will happen. But it can immediately switch to hope, because you go, but if we shore up the foundation right now, it's going to cost you less, and it's going to ensure a better, brighter future. So that piece for me, man, it's definitely, I probably struggle. I see it for myself. I probably don't step into it for myself as much as I see it for others and help others step into it. I think that's been one of my passion pieces that I've very fortunately gotten paid to do, but coming alongside leaders and their teams and helping them think about current state, future state. Where are you today? Where do you want your team or your organization or the culture to be? You and I talk about that a lot, even just like your business, my business. Like, when we think about the future, there's an energy and excitement for me. And even you and I have touched on it. I don't know if we've dug into it too much, but the McManus's 7 frequencies of communication. So he talks about almost like love languages, but it's a communication style. And mine is called SEER. So that aligns so perfectly with Futuristic. By the way, the shadow of the SEER is perfectionistic. You don't do it because you know what it will be, but so I'm like, there's some common themes here in my own life and journey. But the one thing that's interesting, I have that optimism. I see it. Where I sometimes get in trouble is I don't articulate it with clarity, and I don't bring the future to today. And I need to do that. When I do that, so back to your whole when I'm
Navigate.
at a crossroads, I need to navigate,
Yeah.
I need a compass. If I actually pause and just go, okay, what have I already seen? Okay, what do I need to do today to make that happen? Or what do I need to do today? Like it might be a phone call I need to make. It might be a decision I need to make. It might be a risk I need to take. But that optimism isn't just about a destination point. But if I bring it back, I sort of like in GPS and cars and vehicles, and you have this in your Tesla, when it knows your final destination, it goes, all right, to get there, here's where we need to stop and recharge. But having that future point, I think, again, helps. You know where you need to get to. There's sometimes you just got to go this way to get there, and that's.
Well, I've had people I've had people with Futuristic say to me before, as soon as I realize the road I'm on won't get me to where I've seen in my head, I have no interest in being on that road.
Correct.
And I see this in people that I meet, that once they realize they're in a bad fit at a job and they're trying to finish well and they don't have the next step clear. The hard part is they don't know what's next at times, what the next step might be, but they're pretty clear that, man, where I'm at will not get me there. Suddenly, it's excruciating to do a job that they did probably fairly easily months before. And with Futuristic, I often find that it's simply the sudden awareness of, wait, this absolutely won't get me there. And so it just won't get me to that direction. And so it becomes quite quick almost, where the Futuristic kind of, once it's turned off, you're like, yep, I'm gone. Much like the cause part with belief and connectedness there, this thing with Futuristic as well, if you're like, why am I suddenly exhausted? I often say, have you given up on any future potential in the seat you're in?
Yeah.
Does that resonate?
Yeah. I think it's almost breaking. It's having clarity on that future state, but then breaking it down. Because again, sometimes there is I call it Mr. Miyagi management. So when Mr. Miyagi was having Daniel's son, his little,
wax on, wax off, paint the fence.
That's an old movie from the '80s, but there's a newer version of it, right? So, but he's having to wax his car, paint his fence, sand the floor, deck. And he's like, dude, it felt like a waste of time.
Sure.
But actually the mentor in that scenario is like, no, these are things that have to happen in order to prepare you for. So, but the moment you're right, where you're like, no, why are we still waxing the car instead of actually fighting in the arena, which is what he was being trained to do. I think you're right. Those are conversations even that I had to have with myself, my family. At some point, it's like, this, even though it's impactful, could be impactful for another 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Yeah. Does it feel like I'm missing that opportunity? And I do think there's other things in life where we're wasting our time because you're delaying the inevitable of whatever that next decision is. So,
do people ever confuse you calling out potential for you actually critiquing?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
The reason I read that, because Futuristic will say, man, if only they would have done this. And people are like, well, why'd you pick that sandwich? Yeah. And like, Futuristic, I'm not critiquing it. I love the sandwich. But they will complain that when they're calling out potential, people think they're calling out critique.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I've learned I need to be cautious, especially if it's a decision that's already been made. It actually does the person no value. I was going to say it does me no value. It probably does me no value, but it makes me feel good to be like, I was right there, right? If you would have just done we recently, think of real life scenario. My daughter negotiating or calling to get a photographer for her wedding next summer. And this in sales, they were just like, what's your budget? She's like, well, I think it's this, but we could, and I'm like, no, don't do it that way. Say that. Ask them how much they charge. You
just anchor the price. Come on.
Great. But it's like, on one of the other, conversations we were having, I said, hey, can I have the first I said to my wife and daughter, can I have the first conversation with them? And I wasn't being a jerk. I wasn't negotiating, but I just said, hey, you threw out a lot of great stuff for catering. Yeah. It sounds awesome. Like, can you chat with the owners and just tell me what could you do? Yeah. And all of a sudden 25% came off the bill. You're like, oh, okay.
Oh, that's how that works.
So, yeah.
With a profile that's really all about being very intuitively driven, Jeremy. You've got connectedness and belief. You've got maximizer in there. You got woo in the top. And, with woo, self-assurance, belief, these are very intuitive themes. And then you also have potential. So it's like vision on the outside, but internal drive in the middle. Where does routine maintenance kick in? When it's grind and staple and fold, as I like to say in the old days.
those words.
Right? Don't mean a thing anymore because nobody staples and nobody folds.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm old. What do you want from me?
Yeah, you're not seeing it in my top 5. And I know in our quick 2-minute conversation before we went live, I think you were the one when we first dug into my top 10. You had me kind of claim that 6 and 7 because those ones really do, that self-assurance and woo come into play a lot. So there is a little bit of those actually almost add into that same mix you just said that don't give me like routine, discipline, and grit. Again, if you look at the bottom of my list,
responsibility.
At the bottom of my list, you see things like consistency and discipline. I'm like, those are not who I am. Those aren't.
Nope, not at all.
So responsibility is number 10 for me. So when I look at my top 10, when I look at those other strategic thinking themes, it's actually I know you coach people around strengths, but if people see they're 34, executing is my least common of these. So inspiring people, right? The people element.
Yep.
Thinking, I love to think big, especially when it's for other strategic, futuristic. The executing piece is not where I get a ton of energy. Now, what's interesting, belief right there in sandwich in the middle of those 7 is my guide, is my compass, is the thing that I'm like, okay, but it doesn't just happen by itself. You actually have to, even your Tesla, yes, it will come pick you up, but it's not going to go further than that without you getting in the car and saying, here's the destination, right? It's not going to just go on its own. So that whole idea of to summon something or to find a destination, we have to do something. So for me, responsibility is the theme that I probably, when I mix it with belief, it instigates get out of bed, get stuff done with energy and excitement. And again, sometimes it's stuff you don't want to do. I don't love checklists and doing but sometimes you're like getting those things off my list. The other thing that I found, Mike, is when I surround myself with others who do get energy from checking things off their list. Mm-hmm. So at Gallup, my executive assistant, Jacqueline, she's phenomenal at just crushing just like 50 things to do today. She's cranking it out, getting it done. When I say to her, which is responsibility number 10, I will get that to you today, I know that that's checking it off her list. So there's also like a relationship building. Like when my wife has, been helping us with our business startup with Recreate Work, and she's our chief of staff and kind of keeping all ships afloat, making sure I was on the right meeting today. She called me, she's also an interior designer. So she was on her way to a client. She's like, you have a call with Mike, you have a podcast, click on the right link, but there's a responsibility piece that I'm like, hey, I don't want to let her down. I don't want to let you down. I don't want to. That creates this sense of movement toward the goal. And again, if me or anybody else is sitting and contemplating a decision, one of the best pieces of advice I was given is give yourself a date. Decide by blank. Because there can always be, there's another new model coming out. Oh, there's another new, but you're like, decide by a date and do something.
Yeah. That's really good because I think to go back to our first comment about Maximizer, it's without the date, you can't quite finish the sentence. Because instead of it being, what's the best decision I could make? You have to say, what's the best decision I could make and the information I could gather in 30 days? What's the best decision I can make in a week? What's the best decision I can make knowing what I know, and I have to make the call before 5 p.m. today? That date ends up being really, really important, I feel like, for those driving themes like that.
Yeah.
It's a big piece.
And I the other executing strength I have top 10 is a ranger. So this one can help me reprioritize in the moment, right? A ranger is like spinning plates. I've got to postpone this, whatever I was going to do, and I got to take care of this. I can create a sense of urgency. It can also, again, the blind spot of it is I can also deprioritize the things that probably are priorities and be like, oh yeah, I wanted to Google grass
Yeah.
seed because I need to reseed my lawn in
Yeah.
October. And I'm like, that does not need to happen. That can happen when I'm
You can
sitting
delay
on the
it.
couch
That can be
tonight.
another time.
But right
Yeah.
now during my work day, what are the things I need to prioritize? Yeah. So.
Yeah. When your profile, your themes, again, you held up your little sheet there. There are lots of influencing relational themes. A lot of that I make up in my own head is very intuitive. It's very internal. It's a sense of feeling. It's a sense of direction. It's a sense of what's right and wrong. You, however, are not a single person. You're a married man with a partner who's a partner with you in life and business right now. You just referenced Jill. Jill is not the same as you. You guys have some overlap. But what's the process that you've learned for yourself? If you actually, because I know a lot of us can be intuitive, but if you could step outside yourself real quick and say, you know what, this is how a thought becomes an idea, which becomes something worth instigating to a point where I share it with a partner. A lot of people listening are going, yeah, Mike, if I did my own thing, I could go do this and my kids are grown, fine, but I'm married, but I'm in a partnership. I have responsibilities. How do you navigate that when you're so intuitive, but you're living in a relationship with people who may not be?
Yeah. So, two things. One is I think any partnership, and I use the term a lot, collaboration. So to collaborate, we're like, oh, that sounds fun. We're going to jump on a call together. We're going to whiteboard together. But the word labor is sandwiched in the middle of the word collaboration, right? When labor means work. Labor is hard. For moms out there, my wife included, like they know labor is not fun, right? So it's like, but to co-labor, when you work with someone, it becomes easier. So if I'm raking my leaves and you go, dude, I'm in town, let me help you with that. You're like, okay. You strategically will show up after the leaves have fallen in December.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Is when I think you're coming to town next. So it's like, but there's that element of when you do things with somebody, you're helping somebody move, or you're brainstorming, or you do have a life decision, or you've got a sick family member, and when you do it with somebody else, it's not just being alongside of, but it truly is a with. And so I think that sense, you use the word partner. When we have partners in life and in work, there's something about partnership is a both and. It's a give and take. It's a coming up under. It's not just you exist to help me, but you exist to help me. How do I help you? And it's kind of lifting each other up. So Jill and I, or even with my son, or with you over the years as my friend, it's like there's times where it's like you're helping me. How do I help you? So I think that's part of it. Hey, Jill, I have this vision to start this business. What does this look like? But what are the sacrifices that means for us? Or what is that? There's also been times in this decision where she's like, you need to do this. And I'm like, whoa, hold on a minute. Here's what's cool too with complementary partners. And this is where strengths comes into play. And I know her strengths, she knows mine, but she's got activator in her top 10, which we both have strategic. So we can both kind of map some things out. We both got woo. So we like being around other people. She does bring a lot of other relationship building strengths. So Roy is the glue of the team. That high relator is one of her strengths. So there's a deep sense of trust with her and others around her. But that activator and then some of her other executing strengths, it's actually just beyond her top 10, by the way. Everything's purple. So it's all executing. It's achiever and arranger, and she's got it all to just drive. But she'll drive with and for other people. So our house is immaculate. There's a lot she does to make it look that way because she knows people are going to come visit, right? So she's motivated by humans.
People-driven action.
But her activator, where it can feel like this intensity, and I'm like, dude, what? Like, back off. She's like, you need me, you want me, and she's absolutely right. Where I'm like, thank you for making that an urgent piece, or for us doing that before we went on vacation or did X, Y, Z. So that's, I think, the complementary piece too, is I know there's things I will delay without her activator, without Joseph's competition, like, Dad, we need to go now, we need to do. And so those also create that sense of freedom, is a word I use a lot, even in decision making. Is the current decision you're going to make going to improve wherever you're at today on this freedom metric? We're truly free and captive, and 0 out of 10 on not free would be in prison, in solitary confinement. You can't even go outside, right? So probably not many of us are there, but when we think about where we're at, I talk to a lot of people that are 5 or 6 and whatever their current job is. Some of them relationally, talking to somebody who's dating this guy and they want to get engaged, and then she's like, I just don't know. And I'm like, if you don't know, why are you? I'm like, it sounds like but that sense of freedom, I think sometimes when we're torn with decisions and we're looking for the roadmap and we're trying to find that inner compass, I think sometimes we need to say, what's your AI in your Tesla? It's Grog or something.
Yeah, Grok now, I guess. Yeah, I try not to use it.
But at some point, you need
Elon.
another voice to go, where should I go here, right? So it's where, a lot of your clients reach out to you as their coach. I reach out to you as my coach, my friend. Like, I'll ask my wife, Jill, what do you think here? And I think that outside voice of people who think different than me, have complementary strengths to me, sometimes tell me what I don't want to know, sometimes tell me what I already know. But I think that
is there a pattern though for you? Is there a pattern in things that you're like, you know what, man, I get into trouble if I have to. I've taught myself in 50 years of life that when this comes up, these are the flavor of things that I ping Jill for first.
Yeah, so I tend to, and this took me longer than it probably should have to figure out, if there's things that are creating emotion in me, like even stress, my self-assurance gives me a lot of confidence. Even when you were saying earlier, my kind of combination of strengths, I think I look for a sense of peace of like, am I okay with the decision? Like, I'm jumping out of the airplane, there's an excitement with that, but there's also a sense of peace. So I'm like, I know I can go. When I start to feel other emotions that, by the way, aren't always real. And again, that, you teach that, you talk about that with fear. Yeah. My favorite definition of fear, it's an acronym, FEAR, of false evidence about reality. So I'm like, COVID, the world is ending. You're like, no, bad stuff is happening, but we're also like, we're here. It's okay. We got back to work. We're navigating the world differently, but we got through it. So you're like, the doom and gloom, like whenever there's moments in my own head that there's stress, there's fear. My younger version of myself, Mike, would be like, I'll just figure it out. I'll muster it up. Kids went off to college. I'm like, that wrecked me. I didn't talk to anybody about it. And with Jill, my life partner, I'm like, how are you doing, babe? Are you good? What do you need? And it was tough for her as well. So I didn't say, hey,
I'm scared.
It's wrecking me. I'm scared. This sucks. Yeah. So actually, even starting the business, like the day I was chatting with my boss, I like felt numbness in my left side of I'm like, am I having a stroke? Am I having a, and my daughter gets these panic attacks sometimes. I've never had one. And I was like, I got my little Aura ring. I'm checking my heart rate. Now you begin to overthink it. But what I did, Mike, is I immediately went downstairs, and after I kind of calmed myself down a little bit, put on a song, was just kind of meditating, praying a little bit. And I go downstairs and I told Jill, I said, hey, here is how I'm feeling. And what I found is there was some of that she's like, that's not real. We're jumping out of the airplane and here's why, and it's okay. We're still going to do it. And, but what I found is those aren't, it took me 51 years, and some of those I just learned in the last 2. But the more I can confide in her or others when life is scary, when I am uncertain, when I'm not as confident, when I'm doubting I just think there's so much there that we're not designed to be independent.
Yeah. What's so interesting to me is how much, and this is me just kind of making this up, is how much I find people with a large collection of influencing themes, which Clifton Strengths falls into 4 domains, for those of you who don't know: executing, strategic thinking, relational themes, and influencing. I have a lot of influencing themes as well.
Your yellow bar on that little thing I just showed is like,
I'm pretty much all there, the top 10, except for like 2 in relational.
Mine's kind of a 30-ish.
Yeah, yours is smaller.
Those are all the themes, right? But Mike's is like,
I'm just all yellow there, orange in the middle. When it comes to influencing themes, it's incredibly intuitive, and I find that we, to collectively use the royal we, that we often are so clear and so intuitive. But what's interesting is in moments of great stress, for somebody who's so in touch with what they believe to be true in their gut,
Yeah.
they get very dissociative and separate. And they get almost completely attached. I remember I was in Patagonia in April, and I'd run down there to a scouting trip for a new Patagonia excursion we're going to do in April. But meanwhile, I've squeezed this in.
I think
48 hours.
Joseph told me we're going on that, by the way. I haven't talked to you.
I'll save you a spot. But in classic activator command fashion, I have actually scheduled this trip to Patagonia and left myself 36 hours to get back, to drop my bags, to fly to San Diego and do a keynote for the San Diego Foundation. And it's all lined up. And I was like, but literally, it was the only time I could fit it in with my guide in Patagonia and this other trip. And I wanted to do it. And so I fit it in. It was all set. Well, I get to the counter, the Latam counter in Puerto Natales, Chile. And I get there only to discover that they have somehow, for some reason, unchecked in all the Delta code share seats, have oversold the plane, and there's no seats left. And she's like, and I'm like, I have the boarding pass. That's the seat. She's like, no, you did not check in time. I said, it's 90 minutes before the flight. She's like, no. And I remember standing there, and I got really calm. I'm on the phone with Delta. I got the woman here in front of me, nothing. And what's funny is my Garmin watch is going nuts. I'm just calm. Listen, this is the thing. It's going to be fine. My body knows immediately. And it's funny. It's happened a couple of times. Bologna. I'm trying to get to Africa. I'm flying from Bologna this past summer. From Bologna to Nigeria, same thing. Problems with visas. And I just felt incredibly calm and clear because that's what command feels in moments of chaos. And meanwhile, my Garmin did it again. Rapid heart rate. It's interesting how we can be so in tune with what we believe to be true and yet under great stress almost be detached in some ways. But your body still knows.
Yeah.
That's what I hear when I hear you
you're
tell
saying
story.
this, and there's probably a leadership principle in here too. Like I hear people talk about, and I'm a big advocate of it, and even have a chapter in a book I'm working on this whole idea of confidence and courage kind of go hand in hand. And so the more courageous you are, the more confident you are, the more confident you are, the more courageous you are. But it's like, there's this element, and I was with a client and they were talking about, actually it might've been a client you and I were together with. They were talking about the duck on the water. Yeah. Like great leaders have to be calm and communicate calm, but it's like, and again, I get that it's like genuine, but there need to be people in your life, and it might be a really small circle at work or at home, personal, who see this and get this. And even they're like, all right, that's part of the strategy. That's part of how it works. That's part of the, so yeah, your heart rate goes up and yeah, it's stressful, and feel that emotion. Yeah. The best thing that somebody said to me was like, dude, when your kids laughed or when they went up to like, talk about that. That's okay. Like, and it's okay to feel both things. I'm super happy for them, and my kids, and they're thriving on their own, and they don't need to be in the same town my wife and I are, but we're like, yeah, we miss them and we love them, and we, so it's like, you can feel both of those things. And I didn't give myself permission, which is why, that's my favorite chapter of your book. But giving myself permission, I think I used to always just be the don't ask permission, ask forgiveness later, just go. But I'm like, nope, grant permission to yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about. Like, because I think I'm the same way with my influencing themes is, well, just ask forgiveness later. And a lot of times I won't ask, not because I don't think I can get it through, but because I don't like the thought of roadblocks. And so even as I listen to you tell, I'm like, even in your marriage, I'm like, I wonder if when Jer's saying, Jill will ask these questions, do you find at times she'll wait when you probably should ask sooner because you're not ready to have the questions being asked?
Yeah, totally. I'll
digging into that space.
And I do this too. Like I'll use humor to kind of change the topic or to,
right.
But yeah, it's the value I found, and again, she's my best friend on the planet, but so she's so good at it, is she's like, I'm calling BS on this, and I'm like, okay, yep, you're right. And
I just love the collaboration thing though you said before, which is this idea of co-laboring, and like with you and Jill and other people and their spouses or even their work teams. I don't know who it was, if it was Dr. Clifton or Chip Kimball or somebody who used to say that the key to team success was never compatibility. It was always respect. Is the idea that what people will say, what's the perfect strengths mix for team success? Meaning compatible strengths. And I always say there is no strengths mix that creates success because compatibility isn't the answer. It was respect that allowed both of us to hold on to the same mission together for completely different motivation.
Yeah.
And with completely different approaches. And when I think of you and Jill, and when I think of the best partnerships I know, they're unafraid of tension, right? Tension is a good thing when you can hang a bridge off it, but we are afraid of tension between human beings relationally. But without that tension, you can't find, the trick is you have to have two posts that won't let go.
Yep.
And I think that's the bigger commitment more so than, oh, my strengths are like my wife's or my strengths are like my friends. It's actually, do we have a mission so clear that we don't let go of it so that tension is useful to us? Because we both know we're both committed. We're not going to let go. And so it doesn't matter if we're going to be pushed or not pushed. We don't have to be afraid of that. I think when I forget that is when I avoid. That's when I don't say the hard thing. That's when I don't share earlier when I should. And I actually cheat myself out of greatness at times because I'm thinking too small and I'm afraid of letting in because I'm afraid of that tension I might feel and I'm not sure they're in it with me. And so I think cultivating relationships that you can trust are in it with you, you're more open to the outside feedback you need.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I like that.
In some ways. When you think about for, as we kind of turn the corner here on some of this, I think one of the things that's fascinating about what you're doing is it could be easy to listen from the outside and go, well, Jerry, you're a self-confident guy. Yep. But that's not me, Jeremy. I have, I got 3 kids who are between 12 and 7, and they got this going on. And, I'm stuck in a dead-end job. That's nice for you, but this doesn't work. Like, how does that make that, what are learnings that you're finding? Because you're still in it. What are things that you're finding that you're like, you know what? This is what it took for me to get to this place of holding a dream for a long time and then finally taking an action on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we used the word clarity earlier. And I think when you can clearly define your what and your why, so that's another construct I kind of use with leaders just in conversation, personal life with my kids. My son and I were recently talking about it, just even with delegation of stuff, is I think too often leaders get too into the weeds on the who and the how. So if my son's working on a marketing project and I'm like, here's who you need to outsource this to, and here's how you need to do it. And all I need to do is clarify as his partner, as a leader, is what and why. Here's what we want to accomplish. Here's why we want to do it. You figure out the who and the how. And I think back to like that component of decision making, a lot of times I think we know what and why we want to do. But I think that's where you're like, what's really the risk involved? Like, there's a lot of risk for a lot of people out there that are making decisions, but you're like, I don't know, like, go try it. Like, go try it. And if it doesn't work, what's your backup plan? Alex Hermosi, who my son is an avid watcher. And
he's
reader,
an avid Hermosi fan.
But he talks about, he's like, dude, there's never been a safer time to start a business than in 2025. And you're like, what? He's like, if it fails, if you go flat belly broke, he's like, it's 2025, dude. You're probably not going to end up homeless without food, even if you end up living in a shelter. You're like, you still have a shelter and you're getting soup or whatever. But he's like, for the most part, you probably, if you're at a point where you're starting a bit, you've got friends that you would end up living on their couch, or you've got a house that you would have to sell and move into an apartment, and it's not as nice of a place to live, and but you're like, there's a lot. Like, Jill and I could go through all the things of what would have to happen for me to be belly up on the street, no friends, no family, nothing, Great Depression era. I'm like, dude, there's a lot that would have to go wrong for me to get to there. So you're like, there's no guarantees that what you're going to try is going to work, but and this is an easy question, but everybody asks it. You're like, do you really want to go to your grave someday and say, no, I wish I would have, or why didn't I at least try, or why didn't I go on a date with that person, or ask them to go on a date, right? My new future son-in-law, would say I had to at least ask Emma Pietrocini, "Will you go on a date with me?" So
Yeah.
he's like, I didn't think she'd say yes, but he's like, I at least had to ask her, or I would have regretted going to my grave. So I think that's the piece too, Mike. Is we sometimes just overthink it, and I'm guilty of that too. But do we just need to say the the who and the how? Like, I'm going to try it this way with this person or with this, and I'm going to and navigating again. Sometimes we know exactly who I need to be partnering with or not partnering with. We know how it needs to work, and what the organization is we need to be using as the catalyst to get us there. But
Yeah. What's interesting, I think, is that there's so many times that it can be true for influencing themes and as well as other domains, I suppose. The biggest barrier we face to taking risks and even considering change is pride and ego, where I'm confusing my influence on the world for my ability to influence how they see me. And the thought of having to ask, the thought of being imperfect from someone, and there's something about having to let go of the worst situation would be I would have to ask somebody else for help. I would have to ask my parents for a loan. I would have to sleep on someone else's couch. I'm a single person. I would have to ask. And that's been one of the biggest lessons that I'm still trying to internalize in the last 3 years for myself, is how much I'm confusing my influence or being able to do good in the world with whether or not people like me in the world, whether or not they see me as significant and successful, and that taking risks and chances might put that in danger. And what will people say about me? And the amount of times people's choices aren't about the reality of the choice, but about their attempt at trying to control the voices that would say things about them.
yeah,
I feel like our influencing themes were cursed with it a little more than normal.
yeah. Well, there's I mean, woo, even the acronym standing for winning others over is I want to be seen as winsome. So
Yeah.
in life, if I've made somebody mad or they didn't laugh or they didn't, I'm like, what do I need to do to, and then we almost try too hard to kind of try to win them back. But yeah, those a lot of those influencing themes, significance, we want to have big impact on the world, and in a good way, not a bad way, but you're like, so I think you're absolutely right. I think of it too, our buddy Jamie Hunt, often talks about, sometimes in life when you're making decisions and it's hard decisions or just owning bad decisions you've made, personal, professional, you've got to own it at the extreme. And so it's almost just that reality to just be honest with self. Like, okay, so what if they don't like me? Like, what is that?
Yeah, take it to its worst case scenario.
Take it to its worst spot, because he's like, when you do that, and by the way, that's sometimes people continue to lie to a partner in life because they're like, they're going to leave me, or you're like, all right, but go to the extreme of if they leave you, but is it better that now they know that you've told them, that you've been honest, that you've, whatever it is, like financial stuff, you're like, face it.
Right.
It's like shining a flashlight into the dark corners. You're like, oh, it's not actually that scary. It was, I was outside last night at a bonfire. My buddy, we were at some friend's house, and he put his hand back. And he goes, whoa! He thought a raccoon had come up out of the woods. It was a cat. It was their household friendly cat, but he needed to see it in the light. He didn't know what. And you're like, oh, it's not that scary. We don't need to be afraid of the cat. It's not a raccoon. But like, just sometimes own it at its extreme, shine a light on it. Again, I think back full circle to collaboration. I think that's what friends do. I think you as a coach often have, throughout my life, my career, 20 years ago when I left the nonprofit sector, came to Gallup. In my career at Gallup, I had 3 or 4 different job changes, opportunities, but every one of them I'd call you and be like, all right, man, I mean, I think that's your niche, right? When people have tough decisions to make, call my team.
I get the phone call.
Yeah. But it's like, but you're so good at helping people, and even like you said, Clifton Strengths as a tool, like to use Clifton Strengths as your navigation tool. Like, but it's calling out fact versus fiction at the reality of who I am, who I'm not, who the world is, who they're not. That clarity is critical to take that next step. And sometimes the only way you knew it wasn't right is because you tried it. You're like, I think I'm going to love that food or that restaurant. And you're like, nope, I was wrong.
Yep.
Re-navigate, back the car up, go down this road.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
The small, and those small things too, because even the steps that you take when it comes to decision making, we like to say a lot of times, if the step is too high, lower the step. There was a lot of conversations for a lot of years, right? There were book proposals. There was writing that went on long before you ever got to the place that it's been more than a decade of these conversations. And I think people forget that you're not dishonoring yourself. You're actually taking action by saying it out loud, by trying to write a book proposal, by having the conversation with your spouse or partner about what it might look like financially to move to their health insurance versus yours because you're going to leap off a building. I think she's making the steps smaller.
Way, so.
She's self-employed. Y'all are in trouble.
Her health insurance, I get where you're going.
But those are the big things. And even as I think through, if we unpack this, and I'm going to give you, by the way, you don't know this, but we're going to finish with the 4 questions, the best of us questions. So we're going to finish with that. I forgot to tell you that. But I think as I think through looking, what I've heard in decision making of like you starting this company and navigating in different ways, it's one, with belief in connectedness in a profile, options aren't the first choice. The cause is, right? When it comes to maximizer, it's going to be more about let that drive you to greatness, but simultaneously don't let it lock you up in perfectionism.
Yeah.
And then I think having the way to go, who do I need around me? And how do I partner well? How do I partner well in that scenario?
Yep.
Trying to find different, especially with all that strategic thinking and, you have that and relational and the influencing. It's an interesting mix. One thing I wanted to do, I kind of started doing this in the last couple of podcasts. I'm waiting to see if I can work it out completely. Gallup has a great thing. We do a lot that I think came out of one of Gallup's courses years ago. They give it to, when you get certified, it's one of the tools they give you. And we do this with our clients a lot. We'll do a thing called the best of us. And instead of using Clifton Strengths language, we ask 4 questions. You get the best of me when, you get the worst of me when, you can count on me too, I need from you. If you had to finish those sentences, what are the answers today, Jeremy? You get the best of me when, you get the worst of me when, you can count on me too, this is what I need from you.
Yeah. You get the best of me when things are done with excellence. When there's also a sense of freedom and autonomy. Like that's probably that self-assurance piece for me too. Worst of, you want me to keep rolling?
Yeah, good. Hit all 4.
You get the worst of me, and it's a little bit the opposite. I use this tool with clients a lot too, and they're like, so when there's a lack of freedom, when things feel C+, not A+, right? When things feel rushed, this is interesting back to our conversation, but not thought through. It doesn't mean we need to delay it, but if you're like, just hit the pause button is a little bit better, and then boom, we can go. And if it feels too micromanaged, so the sense of autonomy, if you're trying to tell me I have to do it a certain way, or here's the structured discipline I need in my day, I'm like, nope, that's not me. You can count on me, and I'm stealing this from my buddy Ronnie Rothy, who Mike. Yeah. He used to just say, Jeremy, you always push the status quo, but I like it because you make things better. So you can count on me to annoyingly push the status quo, challenge your thinking, challenge where we're at, but you can also count on me to make things better, like whether that's in not just projects, but with people, scenarios, environments. And then what I need from you, you used that word respect earlier. I'm going to steal that one because I think that sense of mutual respect. So trust, honesty, grace. I think when you respect somebody, you offer them grace, freedom to fail. I'm going to screw up. I'm going to let you down a lot. There's going to be times, Mike, where you come to visit and I forgot that we have other people coming to visit. I
come to town to stay and think I have a bed only to discover I'm sleeping in the neighbor's house.
You were there 4 days, and then the 5th day, I'm like, Mike, we're putting you up at my good buddy Tyler's house. Tyler's a great guy. He's got a great bourbon collection. You're going to love him. You're like, so
I'm like, what?
So I'm going to fail you. You're going to
fail me.
But I need grace.
Lots of respect.
Grace. Yeah.
Jeremy, just before we wrap it up and I kind of close this out here, if you're talking to somebody, talking to yourself, you're talking to somebody else who's who's trying to decide how to navigate what is a very traditional role. They have a job, they're living in that space, but they're not sure it's enough. What's the most encouraging thing you could tell them as they're stepping into this process of figuring out how to navigate without a map?
I would ask them the question of, why isn't it enough? So I think they need to be honest with themselves there, because sometimes just our own greed, world, social media, everybody tells us there's something better out there. And then I think the second question is, what do you want? What do you want? You got to be honest with yourself. What do I actually really, really want? And
let yourself want something.
Yeah, there's got to be. And by the way, a lot of times you do want it, you just don't know you want it, or you don't have the courage to say it out loud. So, because we're like, but what if I don't get it, right? So I want a life partner, but I don't want to say that out loud because what if I don't get that? Or I want, to be independently wealthy, but what if I don't get it? Okay, but you still want it, so say it.
Yeah.
Say it to yourself. Say it to a confidant. Say it to a coach. Say it to a counselor, somebody who will, is mandated by the state to not share it with anyone. You're like, but what is it that you want?
Yeah. Why isn't it enough? And what do you want? Yeah. That's great, man. Thanks. I appreciate that. And again, even as you're listening along at home or watching sometimes, however you've seen this podcast, one of the things we'll say a lot is that there's a great old saying. This is the beginning of wisdom is to call things by their right name. So maybe you don't have words as to whether or not, why it's not enough. You don't have words to what you want. And so for us, we leverage Clifton Strengths. So that's why we kind of, as a tool, it's just great vocabulary to apply to the wants, to apply to the what am I afraid of questions. And so if you haven't taken it, we suggest you go out to my.gallup.com. If you do, just so you know, you can actually there's a link in the description here for what we call a navigation brief. You can drop in your top 5 and a question, and kind of like Cameo, but better and useful, you'll get an actual 5-minute video from myself or my team on how to actually apply that to your question. But some of you are just trying to figure out how to get started, but we have a thing called the Compass, the Clarity Compass. It's just 5 questions that we can send you to ask, hey, am I on the right track? Am I going in the right direction? Also, you know what? If this meant anything to you, like, share, subscribe, follow, all that stuff helps us find new people. Jeremy, I can't thank you enough for being here today.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate you and everything you do. Everything you've done for me and my family, man, but also just I know there's so many people out there on the planet who are better.
It's been a fun ride. It's been a fun ride. We'll see all you guys next time. Thanks for joining us. See ya.